With the NHL returning just a couple weeks away with not just the qualifying round, but then eventually the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, there are certain players that stand out to me as ones that we all need to make sure that we're paying close attention to, keeping our eyes on and really looking for them, and not just the Stanley Cup playoffs, but the qualifying rounds. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Tyler and I just do consistent content on all things really in hockey and the NHL overall. And yes, for you today, I have 10 players I'll be discussing as when it has to do with not just the qualifying round, but playoffs in particular. Every year, it seems like there are players that really step up and become essentially unsung heroes that a lot of teams and fans overall weren't necessarily expecting, and now this could be because of a lack of playoff experience, having no playoff experience, some or a decent amount, or even playing a depth role in the team and just really standing up by having a goal scoring streak or one of those many things. But those are all factors into the players that I chose for you today that I'll be discussing, and these players vary, as I said too, with having zero playoff experience, some playoff experience, and a decent amount. And I really feel that there is strong reasoning for all that I chose today. But if you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe and that like button. I've reached 200 subscribers and that means so much to me. So thank you all who have subscribed. And if you're new here and you like this kind of hockey content, make sure to hit that button and that notification bell to make sure every single time I post a video. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off, we have left winger from the Calgary Flames, Matthew Tkachuk. Already a controversial type player by many because he's really a player where you either love him or hate him type thing. I know that since Tkachuk has first come in the league just a couple years ago, he has taken the league by storm, been a huge piece to the Calgary Flames and their success on that offense. And really, without him, I don't know where they would be. I don't even think they would be making playoffs because that's just how good he is and how crucial he is to this Flames lineup. But Tkachuk has just a hard-nosed game, fantastic in both ends of the ice in his defensive and offensive zone, and is a fantastic playmaker, can shoot the puck in flashy fashion, might I add, and he really does it all. And when it comes to playoffs, he just stands out as a player to me that really I am expecting a lot of, because when you look at the Calgary Flames and that roster, if they want to get past the Winnipeg Jets in that qualifying round, they need guys to step up, besides the likes of Johnny Hockey, of course. But Matthew Tkachuk is a guy I feel they can really bank on, and I think there's going to be no question that he is going to stand out big, not just in that qualifying round, but assuming if for whatever reason Calgary wins that qualifying round going into playoffs, I fully expect Tkachuk to really have a big impact. He knows what it takes to play at a playoff type level, even though he hasn't been there yet. He just has that kind of game and mentality with his overall play. So without question, expect Matthew Tkachuk to do a lot of great things. But in 69 games played this past season, he had 61 points, including 38 assists, and in only 9 playoff games thus far, he's had 3 points with 3 and 5 games in their playoff series last year for the Calgary Flames. So yes, he has had some playoff experience. I don't know why I got that mixed up. But overall, besides that, I think he's only going to blossom more and more as he continues his career as a young phenom in the NHL. And I fully expect him to have a huge impact in that qualifying round against the Winnipeg Jets. Next up, we have the guy who's facing off against him in that first game, and that is Kyle Connor, another left winger. Connor is one of the most underappreciated players in the league already, in my opinion. Yes, he is a very young forward, but since coming in the league, he has progressed each year after each year tremendously, and this year was undoubtedly the best player in that Jets lineup. And in 71 games played this season, he had 73 points, including 38 goals and 35 assists. He easily would have hit that 40-goal total if the season was never cut short, but regardless, Connor is really looking like something special in the AHL, and he really does get overshadowed at times, in my opinion, because of having the likes of Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, Nikolai Ehlers, etc., and that already fairly stacked Jets lineup on the offense. So Kyle Connor, really an amazing young talent, really does it all for them, and I fully expect him to have a big splash. And yes, he does have some playoff experience already. In 23 games played, he has 15 points, including 6 goals and 9 assists, and he had 5 points in only 6 playoff games last year for the Jets. So that's huge, and that really is another reason why I feel that he's going to step up big for them against the Calgary Flames, because let's face it, when it comes to goaltending, the Jets undoubtedly had that upper hand in that series, and I fully expect Kyle Connor to take full advantage of the situation, and assuming if the Jets have a decent to long playoff run, Kyle Connor is going to be a huge part as to why. He is a lethal goal scorer in the NHL already at such a young age, and with the progression that he's done over the past couple of years, as I mentioned, really it seems like the sky is truly the limit for this kid. So I expect a lot out of him, and I fully think that he will have a very strong impact for the Jets in that qualifying round at least. Next up at number 3, we have Robert Thomas. A very interesting story. If you don't know Thomas, drafted in the first round back in 2017, played his second full season in the NHL this year. I really shouldn't say full because it wasn't full, but you know what I mean. Like, he's a sophomore in the NHL this year. And while he did win the Cup with the St. Louis Blues last year, the impact that he's had on their roster this year is significantly more impressive than what it was last year. If you look at Thomas this year, in 66 games played, at 42 points, including 10 goals and 32 assists. Really strong numbers, and really taking advantage of the situation with the Blues, as they have dealt with plenty of injuries on that offense this past season, and Thomas has been in that top 6 plenty, has thrived as their centerman in that top 6 role, and really looking like he can be something special for them, kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He really does it all, as well as strong in his own zone. Neutral zone is great. In offensive zone, he can make things happen with his superb playmaking ability. And his playoff stats in 21 games played, he had 6 points, and even though that isn't necessarily impressive given those stats last year, he was in a much more depleted role. The St. Louis Blues were healthy. They had Tarasenko in the lineup in the playoffs last year, leading up to the Cup, of course. But Thomas is going to have an increased role this year, without question. And when you look at the Blues, yes, they have an amazing roster. But when it comes to their offense, they aren't nearly as star-studded as some other teams that they very well will face in this year's playoffs. So Robert Thomas is definitely a guy that they can bank on, and a lot, really, I think, is sleeping on just how good he is and what can be expected of him going into the playoffs this year. But without question, I really think Robert Thomas is going to make a lot of noise in the playoffs for the St. Louis Blues. Next, we have one of my favorite players on this list is Andrei Borkowski. I absolutely love this guy in his game. 25-year-old Russian winger who spent the majority of his career up to this point with the Washington Capitals, but of course was traded to the Colorado Avalanche for, I believe, a couple second-round picks just before the season started. And Borkowski is taking full advantage of the situation he has with the new change of scenery in Colorado, but also getting more playing time, given all the injuries Colorado has faced on that offense without question, including the likes of Mikko Rantanen. But let's get into his stats. In 58 games played this year, he had 45 points. Really awesome numbers. Career highs all around, 20 goals, 25 assists, and really coming into his own. There's no question that Borkowski is a threat on that offense. Can really shoot the puck well, has strong playmaking ability, a bigger body forward too that has really taken full advantage, as I said, of the situation. And in 56 games played so far in his career, he does have only 18 points, but you do realize that when he has been on these runs with the Capitals in the past, they were a very stacked team a lot of the times, did not need to bank on a guy like him to be in their top 6, and things just really weren't working out to his potential with Washington. So getting traded to the Colorado Avalanche, just taking full advantage of everything, and I fully expect to have a splash in this year's playoffs, because you have to look at a couple things. If, say, for whatever reason, Colorado deals with more injuries this year, not that I hope it happens, but it is a possibility, of course, say Mikko Rantanen or whomever falls down again in playoffs, Borkowski is once again going to get more playing time, not just 5-on-5, but on special teams. He's been doing great on the power play. And regardless of that, if you're going up against the Avalanche, you have to be worried because, of course, your top defenders and top lines are normally going up against the likes of McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen. That's tiring enough. But then you have a guy like Borkowski who could be on that second or third line, wherever they put him, and will really thrive there against the lines that aren't nearly as good as the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs. So overall, expect Borkowski to make a huge splash in this year's playoffs. Next now we have at number 5, the Swedish phenom himself, Elias Pettersen. Pettersen is such an amazing talent. From his skating ability to his soft hands to his playmaking ability to his wicked wrister, he truly can do it all. And while he isn't the biggest statured forward in the NHL by any means as a centerman, he takes full advantage of the kind of skills that he has. He evades defenders and other forwards easily, making them look silly, really breaking their ankles out there at times with his smooth hands. And he's just so hard to get off the puck, truly. He's fantastic in that offensive zone and has been crucial to the Vancouver Canucks' success as they look like a playoff team finally, or at least on the cusp of being one. In 68 games this year, he had 27 goals, 39 assists for 66 points, almost point per game, and has really been solid since coming to the NHL and is only getting better. And yes, he's one of those guys who has no playoff experience, but I don't think that's going to change anything. He's finally in a playoff type mentality in this qualifying round, and if Vancouver does get past that qualifying round, Pettersen's going to be a huge part as to why with that offense. He's undoubtedly the guy that they rely on the most, in my opinion, and he just truly does it all. And seeing him in the big stage finally being in, even though it's not technically playoffs yet, just that qualifying round enough, I think he's really going to step up his game truly. And I think you have to keep an eye on him. He has no actual playoff experience or playoff type mentality experience, so Pettersen, without question, is a stud. I absolutely love everything about his game, and I fully expect him to do a lot of great things for Vancouver. If they want to go anywhere this year, it's going to be around Elias Pettersen's play. Next now at number 6, we have Anthony Cirelli. He's a really interesting story too. What Cirelli has been able to do over the past couple of years has really been eye-opening to the Tampa Bay Lightning and their management overall. This year in 68 games played, the young centerman had 44 points, including 16 goals and 28 assists. What he has managed to do while stepping up with the likes of guys like Steven Stamkos being hurt and other guys in that offense, he's taking full advantage and really looking like another guy that's easily overshadowed because of all the weapons that they have on that already stacked Tampa Bay Lightning team. And in the playoffs, in 21 career playoff games thus far, he has 5 points, but he did have 2 of those points in only 4 games in the playoff series Tampa had last year against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We all know what happened there. But Anthony Cirelli, a really strong talent, really looking like he's coming into his own, progressing tremendously over the past year especially. And as we all know, Steven Stamkos did get hurt again before the playoffs even start, so I'm not sure if that's going to be short-term or long-term, but regardless, I think, especially if Stammer is out of that lineup, Cirelli is going to get more playing time, and even if Stammer is in the lineup, Cirelli is going to thrive easily, because if you look at Tampa with that deep squad as well, similar to the Avalanche, where you're focusing your top lines against the guys like Stamkos and Kucherov and Point, etc., you're leaving Cirelli up to go against lines that aren't nearly as good as the one Tampa has. So Cirelli, I really think, is going to take a big jump this year in the playoffs. I think they're going to bank on him. I think that some injuries will happen. Not that I wish it does, but that's just normally how playoff hockey goes, right? So because of all those reasons, I really think Cirelli is going to come into his own in this year's playoffs and have quite the splash. Next now at number 7, yes, we have Jake Guentzel, one of the guys that no one wants to face in the playoffs, I think. Guentzel, if you don't know him, a 40-plus goal scorer already in his career, has just been ridiculous the past 3 years plus for the Pittsburgh Penguins, showing that he is not a product of any means being along the likes of Evgeny Malkin or Sidney Crosby. He can do it all on his own, truly. And he was on pace again this season for 40-plus goals and 40 assists, but given his injury, that was, of course, cut short. In 39 games played in this past season, he had 20 goals, 23 assists for 43 points. And if you look at his playoff numbers, without question, the best among all the players I'll be discussing today. In 41 career playoff games, had 24 goals, 19 assists for 43 points, more than a point per game in playoffs. That's ridiculous. And had 1 point in 4 games in the playoffs last year for the Penguins. But Guentzel, he's most likely going to be back with the Penguins for the qualifying round, and if not the qualifying round, then definitely playoffs. But I do believe he'll be back for that qualifying round. If so, watch out, rest of the NHL, especially that East, because they are going to deal with a big-time goal-scoring Jake Guentzel. He's undoubtedly one of the best shooters in the game in the NHL already, and putting him in that already stacked Pittsburgh Penguins lineup, a lot of crazy good things are going to happen for the Penguins. So overall, Jake Guentzel, I fully expect him to have a big splash, and really he's going to get slept on, in my opinion, by many because of how long he's been out. And there's no doubting how good of a goal scorer he is, so just watch out rest of the NHL because Jake Guentzel is coming back and with a vengeance. Next up, at number 8, we have one of the most underappreciated and, misevaluated players in the NHL, in my opinion, and that is none other than centerman Sean Couturier. What Couturier has managed to do over the past, 4 or 5 years has really been remarkable. Undoubtedly the best player, in my opinion, on that Flyers roster, year in and year out. He's just so well-balanced. He is easily one of the best two-way centermen in the game, for sure. Fantastic in his defensive zone. He's out there in crucial minutes, say the last 2 minutes of the game where you're up by a goal or two for the Flyers' sake, and you need to make sure you stay and help in that defensive zone for sure. Couturier is normally in there getting those face-offs and making things happen. He's just that good. And this year in 69 games played, he had 22 goals, 37 assists for 59 points. Really remarkable numbers, and his playoff stats are strong as well. In 24 career games thus far, he has 13 points and had 9 points in only 5 games the last time the Flyers made playoffs, which was, of course, 2 years ago in the 2017-2018 season. But Sean Couturier, out of all the players in that Flyers roster, I expect the most out of him and really can rely on him more than anyone else. Truly, when you look at the Flyers this season, they have had a great season with the likes of Alain Vigneault in his first year as head coach with them, really helping them bring back a playoff-type mentality. And I fully expect the Flyers to make a splash in this year's playoffs, but if they're going to get anywhere, it is going to be because of the likes of Sean Couturier. He's going to step up for them like he has in the past, and he will again this year. So you better not sleep on him. Make sure you watch Couturier, because regardless if you like him, dislike him personally, or not a Flyers fan, that's okay. But there's no doubting just how good he is, and he easily deserves more credit than he has gotten so far in his career. Up next at number 9, yes, we have defenseman, right-handed defenseman, offensive defenseman, Tony DeAngelo. And look, I just want to make something clear. Regardless of how you feel personally about him, whether it's a personal or political reason that you may not like the guy, I want to put that all aside. Because when it comes to this channel, we're not talking about anything but hockey. So we are, of course, talking about Tony DeAngelo, the hockey player. And what is he? He's one of the best offensive defensemen in the NHL today, and there's no doubting that. What he has done since arriving with the Rangers just a couple years ago has truly been something special. In 68 games played this year, he had 15 goals for 53 total points, including a hat trick this season. It was ridiculous. I remember that game like it was yesterday. As a Rangers fan, I watched plenty of the games, if not all of them, and that was a huge game for sure. But Tony, another example of a guy who has no previous playoff experience, and who knows, the Rangers may very well not make the playoffs this year, but if they do beat Carolina in that qualifying round and advance, say have a deep run, it is going to be along the likes of Tony DeAngelo benefiting for sure. Because when you look at that Rangers offense, it's one of the best in the league, but you of course have the likes of Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin putting up the points, but who gets them the puck a lot of the times? It's of course Tony DeAngelo. Even with that stacked right-sided defense the Rangers have with the like of Adam Fox, who is truly becoming something amazing for the Rangers, and Jacob Trouba, who was a very solid two-way defenseman. Even besides that, Tony DeAngelo has stepped up on the power play and 5-on-5 and has really come into his own with his overall game. And you also have to add in the fact that he is, of course, on the last year of his contract. He wants a big payday, so it's just more incentive for him to have a big qualifying round against the Carolina Hurricanes. And as we all know, the Hurricanes don't have the best goaltending in the league. So if the Rangers are going to take advantage with that offense, expect Tony DeAngelo to be a huge part of it. And I really think he's going to come into his own and be a stud. And yes, there are plenty of great Rangers that I would love to talk about for you today, but Tony's really stood out to me as one that you should keep an eye on, because he is one that isn't getting enough recognition yet either, whether it be because people don't like him personally or whatever it may be. There's no doubting the fact that he is an offensive weapon on that defense for sure, and I expect a lot of him starting in that qualifying round against the Carolina Hurricanes. But last but not least, Carolina Hurricanes fans, if you're seeing this, thank you for waiting. We have, of course, Dougie Hamilton. Dougie is one of my favorite defensemen in all of the NHL. What he has done the past couple of years has been amazing, and this year in particular, up until his injury, because of course we know he broke his leg really halfway through the season, almost playing against the Columbus Blue Jackets. It was so unfortunate. I was watching that game. I was shook when it happened, but Dougie was on a Norris caliber type season pace with 40 points in 47 games, including 14 goals and 26 assists. Who knows what would have happened with him and the Carolina Hurricanes if he never got hurt. But when you look at his playoff numbers too, in 38 games played, he has 18 points, and he had 7 points in 15 games last year with the Carolina Hurricanes. Remember, he has split time in playoffs with the likes of the Boston Bruins and the Calgary Flames as well. But I know there's a lot of talk when it comes to Dougie Hamilton, why he's been traded multiple times in his young career. People thinking it has to do with locker room issues. I'm not sure, but what I do know is that Dougie Hamilton is one of the best two-way defensemen in the game today, and was really looking like he would have a possible Norris caliber season if he didn't get hurt. But really amazing numbers there, was on a crazy pace, a career best pace, might I add. And if the Hurricanes are going to beat the Rangers, which is a strong possibility as well, like anything else, I really think it's 50-50, honestly. Dougie Hamilton is going to be a big part as to why. He's a big body defenseman who has really strong speed given his size, can shoot the puck, strong playmaking ability, 5-on-5 and on the power play, and is very strong in his own zone. As a Rangers fan, I'm not looking forward to going up against him at all in that qualifying round, but overall, Dougie Hamilton is just such a superb talent in the NHL. Really doesn't get enough credit I believe he deserves, and if Carolina is going to go anywhere, it is going to be with the likes of Dougie Hamilton leading the way on that blue line. But all those things being said, that is going to conclude this video. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with my 10 players? Do you disagree? If so, make sure to let me know. If there are different players that you're wondering maybe why I didn't talk about them, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear all your thoughts. And if you haven't checked out my previous videos, I'll have them right down here below for you. Especially I'll have this one video that really didn't get many views. I'm not sure why. It goes hand in hand with this too, with players to really keep an eye out for that have the most to prove in the qualifying rounds especially. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do. I know the audio isn't great on that video, but I think the content is pretty good, and for whatever reason, a lot of people just didn't pick up on it. But besides all that, thank you all so much. If you're new here, like I said, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button, and with all those great things, thank you all again, and I'll be back in a day or two.